Welcome back to the story of my parents, Smitty and Joann, part 3. We left off after my parents met and my dad was going off to war. To catch you up, he survived fighting in Europe and Mom waited around for him to come home. And then they got married, September 15th, 1945. For the first 10 years or so of their marriage, they were childless, which was nice. And since Dad decided to make a career out of the Army, that made Mom an Army wife. According to Mom, they didn't really see each other the first few years, and when Dad got shipped to the Philippines, well, my mother was left to figure out how to join him.
Our first anniversary spent together was our third anniversary. That's how messed up it was for a long time. They weren't used to all these wives. They didn't know what to do with us. And I got these orders to go finally, and they said, we'll pay for the transportation, blah, 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 but there was nobody there. So I looked in the yellow pages, and here under U.S. Army, there was this office that says, Transportation, U.S. Army. So I called, and this captain answered the phone, and I told him who I was and what I wanted. And he said, well, we don't deal with it. He said, well, come on down, let's see what we can find out. But it turned out I went on a hospital ship. They had 3 hospital ships over there, the Comfort, the Hope, and the Mercy. And this was the last trip of the Comfort. After that, it went through the canal and went out on the Atlantic side. And it was to go to get fixed up, I guess, in Norfolk. And it became a derelict at sea. They had to go out and pick up everybody, and then they sank the ship. It was in bad shape. Of course, it'd been hit twice by kamikaze planes. And one of them had hit directly on the surgery and killed most of the surgeons on the ship. I was down in the dormitory part, and there were 21 bunk beds. And but we only had 21 people down there. I was the only one that did not get seasick. He said I couldn't go outside, and I said, I've got to get outside. I can't stay in here. I'll be sick. So I went out, and they gave me a rope, and I tied myself, because the water was real rough. And I tied myself to the little rail, and I stayed out there, because they were getting sick down in the mess hall. We spent 26 days at sea without seeing any land. We saw Iwo Jima from a distance at night with the beacon on the hill there. And that's the only land we saw for 26 days. Interesting trip. The captain asked me if I would be willing to put out the daily bulletin every day. But they would tell me what had to be in, and then I could put anything else in I wanted. So a lot of it was the history of the ship, what he'd been through. And then he went to pick up the sick seamen. Now this is the big job of a hospital ship. So we go way out of our way to pick up this seaman. They lower the boat, and the boat goes dead in the water. And that captain is standing out on that bridge, and I heard language that I had never heard in my life, plus the threats of mayhem, slaughter, torture, everything. We all took another look at the captain after that.
So, after almost a month at sea with a salty captain, Mom made it to the Philippines, or so she thought.
We got all dressed up to go in the evening, and of course we were sweating blood. And Manila Bay at that time, all they had were derelict ships that had been sunk down in there. They hadn't gotten them up yet. And it was so hot. And so help me, the man that the customs fella who was supposed to come out and release the ship or whatever his job was, it was his time. The office was closed. And we had to spend the night out in that bay. And you talk about, we all got up the next morning and our hair was all down, just wet. We were just dripping in perspiration and got off. But it's a good thing I didn't fly, because if I'd flown, your father wouldn't have been in the Philippines. He had gone to Japan It was a softball tournament. I'm going to tell you, if I'd gotten off that plane and he wasn't there, whoa.
Then it's a good thing he went on a ship, Mom, and not on an airplane. But the Philippines and most of the Pacific was still recovering from the war, so it wasn't all fun over there. Quonset huts for homes, snakes coming up through the floor, water buffaloes roaming around, and living on a base with a very fresh history of the war.
The colonel of the regiment was Colonel McDonald, and he had been a prisoner of war in that very same camp. That camp is where the death march ended, and then they took part of them and moved them over to Cabanatuan. That's the one you hear more about. But as you go into the gate, which was practically no gate at all, was a great big area, and it was just a mass grave, unmarked.
And where was I at the time? Well, I was just a twinkle in my parents' eye, I'm afraid. Maybe we'll cover that in part 4.